Hi, everyone. This is Hal Krosman with Screenwriting U, and today we're going to be talking about creating a TV series that sells. Now, first, I want to congratulate you for being here because I think most writers don't think about this part until after they're completely done. And then they go, oh my God, I got to figure out how to pitch this or how to get it in a door or something like that. Even if you've written multiple scripts, multiple pilots, I would be thinking about this as early in the process as you can. What is it going to take to sell this project, and how do I get that in the door? So I'm going to go over some of that today and do what I can to help you move forward. Let me tell you what we're going to do. We're going to start out by talking about the three main components that sell shows. These are all within your control. We're going to talk about why most TV Bibles don't work. And there's some very specific reasons, and you'll see it. It'll totally make sense to you when we get there. We'll look at how to create a better pitch, because that's one of the things that everybody in this industry is thinking about. And let me be clear on that. Sometimes I'll say to somebody, hey, well, I think you need a stronger pitch. And they'll act like I just criticized their work. But let me tell you, inside production companies, inside writers' rooms, inside funding sources, distributors, they're all trying to figure out what's the best pitch for this show that will actually have audiences loving it, right? And then we'll talk about the upcoming Binge-Worthy TV class. For those of you who want an advantage going into this market, this is an incredible program. We had some amazing people working on developing it over a 2-year period, and it's designed to help you be able to move forward at light speed and make something great happen. So let's jump into it. First, the three components that sell your show. First one is you need a great pitch. And I just talked a little bit about that. But the pitch is everything until they read the writing, right? So trying to get your show in the door, trying to get producers to read it, or showrunners or streamers or anyone else, it all starts with the pitch. So let's just take a look at a couple of things here. Your pitch essentially needs to have whoever's listening to it or whoever's reading it instantly see your show as something that audiences will obsess over for 5 seasons. Now, this 5-season thing, there's a reason for that. You know, first, the shows that actually do that, like Breaking Bad and these others, all these shows that have made it, you know, to 5, 6, 7 seasons, you know, every one of them has been highly successful, both for audiences and the streamer, but also for producers and the writers. And I'm talking about from a financial perspective there. So they're going to want to see something that the moment you say the pitch, they go, oh, wow, I can see that lasting. Usually the first season doesn't make a lot of money. Because they've had to spend things on sets, they've had to figure things out, they've had to make their first deal, they don't have an audience yet, so they can't negotiate for higher level money, all those kinds of things. But after that, it makes a difference. Second thing you need is a binge-worthy pilot. And I'm going to be defining binge-worthy. This term was around, I think it actually started with Netflix when they introduced House of Cards and put up the entire season. Now, I know people were talking about binge watching before that, but nobody was looking at that as the primary way that they sell shows to audiences. That changed with the streamers. And the thing that was big, and this is why this is important to understand, whether you use this term or not, the thing that made all of the difference was that creating the binge-worthy model out there, causing people to binge watch, was something that gave the streamers power over the networks and studios. It's actually why the streamers are actually more powerful today than any studio out there. So this stuff's important. What this basically means is that your pilot will demand our attention from the beginning. And by the end of the pilot, audiences already know they're going to watch the entire series. Now, think about this. There have probably been shows that you didn't have this experience. And then there have been shows that you got to the end of the pilot and you already knew you're going to watch the entire season. You're going to watch the entire series as far as it goes, right? And that's something that actually shows up in the writing. So as a writer, we actually can choose what it takes to create that binge-worthy experience for an audience, which increases your chance of success with the streamers when you get there. Third thing is a marketable TV Bible. And there's a difference, by the way, between what most people write as a TV Bible versus something that actually is marketable, something that will sell your show. So you really want to pay close attention to this, because I'm going to tell you 95% of the TV Bibles I see don't work in today's market. And there's just certain things, if you understand it, you'll be able to create something that producers, showrunners, streamers immediately see as something that's marketable. If you don't understand this, well, what most people do is they go out and Google it, and then they use something that came from before the streamers. And that stuff doesn't work anymore. So what this comes down to, you hand your Bible, your TV Bible, to a producer, and from the moment they start reading the very first page, they should be saying yes, 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 with every decision. And I mean this, like when they read the concept, the producer should go, yes, I can sell this, right? When they read your lead characters, they're just like, yes, I can cast these. And by the way, these are going to be incredible characters. When they read the episodes, every episode should have them saying, yes, this is something that I can sell to a streamer. Now, if you do that, you're in business, right? Every single part fulfills a need, and every line creates more interest. And I'm going to talk with you about this part a little later on, because there's something you should know about that. So, why most TV Bibles don't sell, and as soon as I say this, you'll probably instantly see it. You'll get it immediately. There's two reasons. First one is they're written as exposition, as in the writer is just giving a book report, right? They're just giving information and backstory. A lot of them, and I'm going to tell you, even some of the production companies that have written TV Bibles before the whole streamer thing started, a lot of them are pretty dull and boring, and you can't have that. That's just not going to work for you. So this is not a book report. This is not about you telling as much as you can. Instead, it's about you focusing, and I'll talk about this more, on the specific things that will have a producer go, that's it. That's it. I can sell this. That's it. Right. And by the way, if you guys think, well, God, this guy's really obsessed about this, please know, this is something that can change your life, right? You make one of these deals and everything is different for you from that point on, right? So if like I've had people before where I said, wow, that, the TV Bible's not working, you need to take it to a new level. And they would act like I was criticizing their writing and I just said something so terrible. But really what's going on is, what I'm saying is, hey, you've got something interesting here. You just need to write it in a way that the interest level comes across to the producer, right? So that means you're writing in different terms. You're not trying to tell the story. You're not trying to give a book report that, you know, that maybe later on somebody would give to tell you about your show after it was on the air. You're trying to have a producer see that this thing will sell, which brings us to the second problem. The vast majority of TV Bibles coming into this industry are not designed to sell the project. Now, let me give you some solutions so that we're not just talking problems here. First one, realize that this is a marketing document, right? And who you're marketing to, by the way, is the producer. You're marketing to anybody that they would bring on the project, maybe a showrunner or something like that. You are marketing to a streamer if they go straight to a streamer, or a funding source if they're trying to fund it themselves, right? And so there are specific things that need to be in that TV Bible for that professional audience to see it as marketable. So first thing, just stop thinking you're trying to tell the story and start going, okay, wait a minute. What my whole purpose here is to have them buy this project. Now, let me pause for a second. That doesn't mean things like saying, oh, it's going to win an Emmy, right? Because you can't predict that. And that's just like somebody say, hey, let's go to Disneyland. Instead, what it means is it means you are presenting the key components that has a producer naturally be able to see this as a project they can sell, right? So that's everything we're talking about today is about how do you write this stuff in a way that the moment the producer reads it, they're just saying yes, right? They say yes over and over and over again. And when you do that, by the way, it's amazing. It's like a producer who may not even believe in you suddenly is talking with you in a whole different way. Now, let's continue with some solutions here. You want to be constantly asking yourself, what makes this show incredibly interesting? And speaking from that. Also, what makes these characters intriguing and emotionally engaging? Now, let me contrast that. What I see a lot is people will spend, 3-4 sentences describing what this character looks like. And then they will give some backstory on the character. And at the end of reading all the way through the whole thing, we haven't had a single thing that is intriguing, and very likely almost nothing that was emotionally engaging. I think you need to be asking this question and thinking to yourself, how do I present something that has them not see the character, but has them know they can sell the character, right? And again, it really comes down to this. If you're, once you understand all of these processes, you look at your show just through a different lens. It's not that you're changing the writing yet. We're going to talk about the writing in a little bit, but you are looking at it through the lens of how a producer who is making business decisions and how a streamer that is making business decisions might think about your show. Then this is the other part. Every line is interesting. Every single line. If you look at your TV Bible and there's a single line that is not interesting, you should consider either eliminating it or rewriting it. Now, let me tell you my most extreme story on this. We got a show into a network, and this was a little bit ago, but we had gotten it in through a lady who was on the team of the VP who was making the decision. The VP hadn't seen any of our stuff, the vice president. But she kept telling him, this is an amazing show. You've got to see it. So he said, all right, I'll meet with them. So we go into the meeting. He sits down right across from me and he says, do you have a TV Bible? And I said, yeah, absolutely. I pulled it out. I gave him one. I gave them to the other people there. And he does this. He looks straight at me. He doesn't look down, looks straight at me, and he opens the page of the TV Bible, takes his finger, and he puts it down in the middle of the page. And then he reads that line out loud. And at the end of that, he goes, all right, that's not bad. And he opens to the next page and he does the same thing. And he reads that line out loud. And then he went, this is pretty good. And then he took it with him and he read the whole thing. We moved to the next step on that. But let me tell you why we did that. We did that specifically because I knew, you know what, we're not trying to just get somebody to like us. We were actually trying to get them to move forward with the show. And I didn't want to give them even one thing they could use to disqualify us. So I went over that TV Bible and I went over that pilot over and over and over to make sure there was not a single boring line. Now, in that case, it completely paid off for us. If I hadn't done that, we would have been disqualified right then. And the lady who brought us in told us up front, she said, he's looking for a reason to say no. So I made sure we didn't give him one. Something to think about. And then finally, E, you need to make the decisions that fit for the producer and the funding sources. And this was something that, you know, I've been working with producers for 20 years. So I was absolutely up for that. But I did an interview with a friend of mine who had, I think she has, at that time, she had like 8 TV shows on the air. And she says, I said, let me just ask you, where are the stopping points? Where, like, let's say I recommend a writer and the writer comes into you, they send you their TV Bible or whatever it is. What are the normal stopping points for you? And she goes, well, on the TV Bible, the first one is I open it up, and if it doesn't fit for my funding source, that means we have to rewrite it inside the office, which means I have to take somebody's time to rewrite the thing. And I was like, fit for the funding source. Tell me what that means. And she goes, well, our funding source has certain things that they need in the TV Bible. And I said, what percentage of the Bibles that come in fit what the funding source needs? And she goes, almost none. She says, with the streamers, they've changed a lot of things. And so I'm like, all right. I said, if I promise not to say anything to the funding source at all, other than to ask specific questions about what goes into the document, would you be willing to let me interview your funding source? And she thought for a second, and then she says, I trust you, Hal. Yes, absolutely. So I had a chance to interview the funding source, and we went through and we looked at exactly what they needed and exactly the steps that they needed. What needs to show up first, what needs to show up second, all of that. And that kind of thing makes the difference, because if the producer can hand it straight to the funding source, you just took out that one moment where they would have said no, and you made that a yes. So this kind of stuff, very important. How do you create a better pitch? And again, this is what everybody in the industry is trying to do. They're trying to figure out, how do you create a pitch that can get it to the next level? So let's start with this. A great pitch is easy to say, and I want to pause right there. If you're stumbling over words when you do your pitch, that's a problem. If you have too much to memorize, that's a problem, right? You should write this in a way that is simple for you to say, that is as easy as possible if you are doing a verbal pitch. Second, it needs to be incredibly interesting, which means the producer or whoever is listening to that pitch should never be able to stop and look at their phone. It should be so interesting that they forgot whatever else they were going to do today, because you gave them something that took their attention and just really got a hold of it. And then you need to present it in the order that makes it easy for the decision maker, right? And we'll talk about that in a moment, I think. Yeah, here it is. First thing is genre. Now, this, I've had some people who have said things to me like, well, I want them to figure it out. And it's like, please know, you don't want the producer or anybody that you're pitching to have to wonder what the genre is. Because remember, how they market things is through genre, how they actually sell it, right? So if you tell them the genre up front, like let's say you say it's a 1-hour drama. Well, right off the bat, they can think of 15 or 20 different 1-hour dramas, how they were marketed, how they were pitched, who they went to, all of those kinds of things, right? So they're already starting to organize how they're going to sell this, which is what you want them to do. If instead you don't tell them the genre, then the next thing that's going to happen is while you're explaining the characters, they're trying to figure it out, right? Is this a comedy? Is this a drama? Is this a thriller? What is it? And the whole time they're trying to figure it out, they're not engaging with your characters, right? So we give them this first. Then we tell them an interesting title that points to the concept. So remember, the title for a producer, for a streamer, is part of what sells the show. So it becomes very, very important. If you've ever gone to any of the streamers and you'll see first you'll see most of them are organized by genre. So you'll go to a row and it'll say action stories. And now here's all the action movies. You'll go to another row and it'll say 1-hour dramas or something like that. And now here's all the TV series that are 1-hour dramas. That's the first thing. Second thing is, if you're looking at any of those that you don't know, you've never seen before, you have that experience that comes for almost everybody who is looking through that, where all you see is whatever picture of an actor they put on the screen, maybe a little bit of a background, maybe it's, they're in a jet or something, or they're, on a battle scene or whatever, or in a boardroom, and then the title. And that's how important the title is, because the title could make the difference as to whether people even click on it to see the trailer or not, right? So it's important. Then you need the high concept. And this is where in 1 or 2 sentences, you could have a producer go from being completely cold to instantly going, oh my God, that's amazing. Let's see what you have. So your high concept is that 1 or 2 sentences that gets to the big hook of the show. It's not a log line, although sometimes it's presented as a log line, but mainly it's about what's the big hook? What is the big thing that is incredibly interesting? That could be the unique mystery, whatever the big intrigue of the show is, or the impossible goal. It could be the incredibly difficult situation that these characters endure. And by the way, this is important, that it's not predictable. Like if you talk about The Walking Dead, when that show came out in the very beginning, it's like, all right, we've seen zombie movies. They did a pretty good job on this particular one. They created all kinds of interesting irony. But the thing that they did that I think made it different was, it may have been one of the first times that we saw It's not the zombies that are the real enemies, it's the other people. So the zombies were, yeah, they were a major problem, right? But it's the other people that are possibly going to kill you and take your food. And so it was like, okay, it created this whole world that was completely unpredictable and an incredibly difficult situation. And it had, you know, a hook that we hadn't seen. So, and then finally, D, you need characters that exist as part of the main conflict, right? That they are a big part of the main conflict, or they're trying to survive the main conflict. They're not just sitting still. But let me just add this other part so you can see this, because you're writing a TV series, not a feature film. You need your characters to be multi-layered. Now, you'll see this. It says, thus providing surprising reveals. Now, think about this. Let's say you're going to do a season and you're going to do 13 episodes, let's say. Well, that means you're taking us through this story. We're going to meet these characters. We need to at least see something deeper than what we might see in a feature film, because they're going to show up for 60 minutes 13 times. But if you're trying to go to 2, 3, 4 seasons, pretty much every one of those lead characters need to have layers beneath the surface. And by layers, I don't mean that we just kind of discover a little bit of their backstory or something like that. I mean, there's a change in kind of who they are. Now, let me give you an example. Let's say that you have, you know, this character and she's a drug dealer. And, you know, and she's in trouble. She's clearly hiding from the police, all these things. She's dealing with the worst kind of human beings that we could imagine. And about halfway through the season, we find out that she's not just a drug dealer. She's also a DEA agent, right? And what that does is the moment that happens, we rethink her entire identity. We see her as a different person than we saw her as before. And now, every time she meets to do a drug deal, we're not just worried for her safety in that moment because of whoever that person is. We're also worried that she might get caught, that they might figure it out. We're also wondering, what's she going to do? Is she going to bust this person? What's happening? So it's created different forms of intrigue just by creating that layer. Now, let's say at the end of the season, what we find out is that a new layer, which is that she's actually there for another purpose. One of those drug dealers that she's trying to get to killed her husband, and she is going to take them out. She isn't going to arrest them. She'll arrest the others, but she's going to make sure that person dies. And now we're seeing her in a completely different way. We may feel empathy for her, right? We may be worried about her, but we're also worried, is she going to do this? And what's it going to cause? And is that going to be the end of her DEA world? And is she going to get caught, right? So because we just added a third layer, now that brings us into season 2. And now we're going to see what she's doing to track down whoever this person is. Now, by the way, there may be 2 other layers beneath that each one of those layers has us now see her in a completely different way. So I hope that helps to make sense out of it. The other part here is that these characters are emotional. Think back to that character. She's emotional, she's driven, but she's also emotional. She is there because of an emotional reason. And she's driven to get vengeance in that situation, and she's doing what it takes for her to survive. So by creating all of this, we have characters that are much more interesting and fit really well for a TV series. Let's go on. So understanding the streamers. why do streamers need binge-worthy TV? And you may be thinking, well, they're just like the networks. That doesn't matter. But yes, it does. And it does because that's what they've created their success based on. That's what gave them more power than the studios. As soon as they let that go and say, okay, it's not about that, then we're back to standard network TV. And it's true, they may be moving in that direction. We're going to see what happens here. But since they were built on this, it's going to be an important part of their DNA. So, and the streamers, by the way, keep this in mind, may be the most important final market for your project. So it is worth considering what they think and how they create and how they make decisions. So let's start. What binge-worthy TV did, and if you think back to when Netflix released House of Cards, I was actually at Paramount that day. I was doing a whole bunch of interviews with producers at Paramount, and the first one came in, and he told me right before we sat down, he said, "Did you see what Netflix did?" And I was like, "No." And he goes, "They just released an entire season of a show that cost them over $100 million to make." And I said, "Wow, would you be okay with talking about that?" And he said, "Absolutely, sure." He says, "I don't have much details." He says, "I just read the Variety report on it." And he sat down and explained the whole thing to the group. And I said, "So what does that mean?" So they released an entire season. And he said, "Yeah." He says, "You can go there right now. You can watch every single episode." And I said, "Okay, what does that mean from a business perspective?" And he goes, "Oh, it's corporate suicide." He says, "Pretty much, we don't have to worry about Netflix anymore." Now, that's important to know because essentially Netflix was presenting a new paradigm. And every producer I talked with that day believed that was the end of Netflix. They believed that Netflix just made this incredible mistake. Instead, Netflix just did something that gave them so much power. They outplayed everyone by doing that. So here's why, again, go back to this. Binge-worthy. First, it creates buzz on social media. The moment that they did that, the studios were saying they were crazy, but audiences were going, what? I need to go sign up for this. And it's the thing that changed Netflix business forever. Second, it brings in new subscribers. And let's go to the third thing. It keeps the current subscribers. Now, let's fast forward to today, because that was like, 7, 8 years ago or so. Today, the streamers have a problem on their hands. And their problem was, we just came from this pandemic where everybody subscribed to as many services as they could because they were sitting in their house. They couldn't go anyplace. The only thing they could do was watch TV and eat, right? And it's like, so all of the streamers were just living large during that period of time. Since then, a lot of people have cut down. They've gone from, hey, I'm going to spend $200 a month on TV down to, let me just use my 3 favorite streamers and, spend $75 or whatever. So these streamers are suffering because of that. So they need to get back new subscribers. They need to keep their current subscribers, and they have one major solution to do that. How do they get people in the door to watch those shows and to stay with them? So that's part of what you are bringing to the table. What is binge-worthy TV? You already know this. You've lived it. Think about the times where you watched one episode of something and immediately thought to yourself, "Oh my God, I'm gonna watch the entire season." Right? And I don't know how you guys do it. I'll tell you how we do it. Long time ago, it was just kind of an unconscious thing. It was like early on, it'd be like, all right, they just came out with 10 new shows. We'll watch the pilot of each one and see if it's something we want to watch. Or somebody would recommend something to us and say, hey, I just watched these 2 shows, check them out. So we would just sit down and watch the pilot. And then if it hooked us, we'd move forward, right? We didn't think about it. Now it's much more conscious. It's like, all right, we're watching the pilot specifically to decide if we're going to watch the entire season or the entire show. And you can think of it either way, but think about this. When was the last time you had this experience? You're watching a pilot, somebody recommended it to you, and you get to the end and you're thinking at that moment, you're thinking, well, I'm going to go to bed here soon. You get to the end of the pilot and the cliffhanger shows up and you go, oh my God, I got to see what's going to happen next. And now you watch the next episode. And then it happens again. And now you watch the next episode. And then it happens again. And now it's 3 a.m. You've got to get up at 7 and you're debating whether to watch the 5th or 6th episode, right? Hasn't that happened to you? So that's when somebody does a really good job at this, right? So let's go on and we'll see. By the end of the pilot, you already have this obsessive need to watch the entire thing. We've gotten to the end of some pilots and I'd look over at Cheryl and she'd go, buy it. We're watching the whole thing. And it's like, yeah, we are. I already knew that. I was just confirming with her. Third thing to know is that there are metrics that streamers are looking at. So I learned this from a producer who called me and said, hey, I have a show coming out this weekend on Netflix. I was wondering if you'd be willing to watch the show this weekend. And I said, sure. And she said, well, I was wondering if you could do it in a specific way. And I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. What does that mean? And she goes, it's going to come out on Friday. You pick whatever time you want to watch, but if you could watch it over a 2-day period. So if you start on Friday, finish it by Saturday night. If you start on Saturday, finish it by Sunday night. And I was like, okay, you're probably talking like a 10, 15 hour commitment here. And she goes, I know. The problem is they're making the decision on Monday. So we need, the metrics to show up properly. So here are the metrics she was talking about. First is how many episodes does the consumer watch? So if you watch just one episode and then you stop, that's not good for the producer or the show. But it's like, well, if you watch half the episodes, that's better. If you watch all the episodes, that's way better. Second, do they watch the entire season? And it's like, what percentage of viewers watch the entire season? Because remember, Netflix is trying to make this decision. Are they about to put, $5, 10, 15, $20 million into the next season, depending upon the show, right? And then third, how fast do they consume it? So she wanted us to consume it in a 2-day period. Because that would help her metrics. I don't know how many people she called. I know it was important to her. So my guess is she was calling every person who potentially owed her a favor. And by the way, the show was good. It was worth watching. But she was trying to just make sure they got that second season. So this is what Netflix is thinking. This is how they're making decisions. And by the way, they have these metrics set up where it happens automatically. So the executive doesn't have to go look it up. All the executive does is pull the report and they've got it. So here's what writing shows that sell is about. It basically comes down to a couple of things. First one, making what I call the 50 most important decisions. Now, I got this from a producer. or a showrunner, I'm sorry. I was interviewing him and I said, talk with us. We were in front of an audience. I said, talk with us about how you break a season. And what that basically means is, how do you start? How do you start a show, right? And he goes, well, he says, what we do is we get the writers in the room and we sit down and we talk. And I said, how long do you talk for? And he goes, depends, 10 days, 2 weeks. And I said, what are you talking about? The weather? And he goes, sometimes we talk about the weather. But no, he says, what we're talking about are the big picture decisions that will either have this show be a huge success or not. And I said, so you're not doing any writing during that period of time? And he goes, not until we figure it out. I said, okay, so, and that's for what reason? And he goes, well, 2 reasons. One is because these are the shows that either make the show survive and thrive, or these are the decisions that have it either survive or thrive or fail. So he says, we want to make the right decisions. And he says, second, because all the writing is based on these decisions. Now, let me pause for a second. I interviewed him and a whole bunch of other showrunners about the early decisions that they make and why they make them. And I'll talk about those here in just a little bit. But after interviewing them, I stood back and I went, wow, they're right. If you don't get these decisions right, you're in trouble. And the vast majority of pilots coming into town, they didn't even think about these. So we'll get to those in a minute. Second thing that sells a show, that makes it so that a show sells, is constantly creating intrigue, anticipation, and obsession. Now, think about these 3. What they all do is have the audience engaged on different emotional and mental levels, right? Intrigue causes us to wonder what's beneath the surface. So we have to figure it out, right? We have to solve the puzzle some way. That engages us in one way. Anticipation is about looking to the future of the show so that we are constantly wondering what's coming up in the next episode. Obsession is feeling this deep need to stay in the game, to keep watching the show, don't go to the bathroom, don't eat, don't do anything, keep watching this show. All 3 of these, especially if you put them together, will create an audience that is so deeply connected and will constantly recommend your show to other people. Third thing is writing a pilot on 5 levels instead of 2. And let me tell you where this comes from. It comes from 2 places. The 2 levels comes from, I was a judge in the finals of one of the big contests. And I'm reading TV pilots for that particular contest. I would say 90% of them operated on only 2 levels. They had a surface, and then they had 1 level below that, where there was some subtext or some deeper meaning or something like that. So I compared that to the shows that were in the top 1%. And we went through and analyzed a whole bunch of them. But those shows operated on 5 different levels. And I really, truly mean that. We have a list of the 5 specific levels they operated on, and the pilot was written on all 5 of those levels. So the audience got so much more depth. They were engaged in multiple ways instead of in just a few. It makes a big, big difference. And it's also the difference between professional versus, well, good. Right? It's the difference between great writing and good writing. And then making sure that you're building a TV pitch Bible that fits what the funding sources need. Now, I already talked about that a little bit, but basically where we got to on this was, you know what, once you understand exactly what the funding sources need in that pitch Bible, when you hand your TV Bible to a producer, they're going to look at it and just immediately go, oh, I could just hand this straight to my funding source, right? It's like there's not an extra decision in there. There's not extra work in there. And they immediately see you in a different light. They see you as somebody who understands, who just helped them, and is increasing the chance that they're going to get funding because you provided the information that was exactly what the funding source needs. Now, stay with me for a minute. If you're really, truly interested in writing shows that can sell, let me just walk you through the upcoming class that's on Binge-Worthy TV that is designed to have people write shows that can have that kind of result. So this is a program that we spent almost 2 years designing. We had two different development teams. Every one of them had people that on them that were pros. We had an executive at NBC Universal who takes pitches. We had people who were in 2 different writers' rooms who were part of it. The entire thing, we were trying to discover what does it take to create true binge-worthy TV that the streamers are going to absolutely love. So let me just walk you through what this class is like. And see if it's something that you might want to jump in on, and then I'll give you a special on this. So let's go on with this. This one is something that every module, I'm going to give you 5 modules. Every one of them have 12 to 15 lessons. We start with module 1, which is the 50 most important decisions of your show. Now, I've been talking about that, but these all came from producers and showrunners. Exactly what are the decisions they make that have them have a show that can sell, right? So these are really kind of in two areas. First one is what makes your show great? And then the second one is what will cause it to sell? If you make those big picture decisions, and they start with things like title and concept, and who the lead characters are, but also what are the dilemmas these lead characters are in? What are their layers? What is it that needs to be there for this thing to work? And it's all the big picture decisions you make that would cause a streamer to be able to say yes to you. Second, then, is the TV pitch Bible that meets the producer's needs. Now, we already talked about this, but it's like, if you look at most of the pitch Bibles that are out there right now, and it's like the vast majority of them, they came from shows that happened before the streamers even started. So they weren't even close to where the technology is today. They weren't close to where the needs are today. Again, we went straight to the source and we found out what they needed and in exactly what order. So you will create a TV pitch Bible that will truly meet producers' needs and meet the needs of the funding sources. And that gives you a much better chance of success. Third is then your brilliantly complex outline. Now, by the time you get to this point, you know a lot about your show from these 50 most important decisions. You have figured out 5 seasons during the TV pitch Bible part in module 2. And now what you're doing is you're going to that pilot episode and you are going to design in 5 different levels at which the audience experiences those characters and that episode, right? So this goes way beyond where most people go. You're building in all kinds of depth, all kinds of intrigue. You are making sure that this is a great pilot from the very beginning. And by the way, if you're somebody who thinks, well, I don't want to outline, please know, in this industry, if you're going to be in a writer's room, you're going to outline constantly. If you are going to be working directly with a showrunner, they're going to be asking you to outline. If you are working with a producer, they're probably going to ask you to outline. This industry is built on this. I ask multiple showrunners, what percentage of the time do you outline versus write episodes? And the one that gave the clearest answer, and they all pretty much agreed with this, he said, we'll outline for 4 to 5 days with the entire room, which means they're really working on that outline. He says, when we got the outline to where everything works, then we hand it to a writer, and they usually have 1 to 2 days to write it. Now, look at the difference. 1 writer, 2 days, let's say, to write it, versus 8 writers for 4 days. It's about 8 to 1, plus or minus. That's how important outlining is. It makes the difference as to whether your project, it has the level of depth that you really need it to have. Then in module 4, we're going to take you through writing a mesmerizing TV pilot. Now, there's 2 things we're going to do in here that are absolutely amazing, but I promise you every single draft you do in here will give you some very specific understanding and will prepare you to work with people in the industry. But the 2 big things that we're going to do is, first, we're going to give you the high-speed writing model. And I talked with a lady yesterday who said that this changed her life. She said after she took this class, she decided she was going to write her next pilot, and she put together her pilot and TV Bible in about a month and a half. So then she wrote 3 others last year, and she said the high-speed writing rules are what she lives by when she's writing pilots. So she's able to get through 3 or 4 pilots a year because of this. It makes a big difference. Second thing is, in module 4, you're going to write 6 drafts. Every one of them is going to have a specific purpose. Like the first one is going to be big picture, making sure you match exactly what's going on in the story and you're delivering on those 50 most important decisions. And from there, every draft you write will focus on 1 or 2 things that are incredibly important and move it forward until you finally get to that final draft where you do all the wordsmithing and make it perfect. So, and then in module 5, now it's about how do you market to producers? How do you get this project in the door? I would tell you most people will never get a project in the door because they don't have a plan. They haven't figured out what it takes to do this yet. So in this particular module, you're going to get all of those steps. How do you pitch it? How do you get it in the door? How do you pitch if they say, hey, I don't have time right now, give it to me in 2 minutes? Versus how do you pitch if you're on the phone? Versus how do you pitch if you've got 5 minutes or 7 minutes, or you're on one of those Zoom meetings face-to-face with a producer? How do you pitch that differently? And how do you answer the questions that they have that usually have a tendency to stump people? And we've got answers to all of those. So by the time you're done with this, you will have created a project that's the best writing you've ever done in your lifetime. And you will have prepared yourself to be able to interact with people inside the industry about that project and to work with them when they recognize just how attractive your project is and what the chances are that it can sell. Now, this program is it's a 5-month-long program, 1 month per module. Every single module moves you forward in a huge way and prepares you to work with the industry. The dates on it, it starts on March 27th, which means, well, you've got a couple of weeks to get prepared. And as soon as you sign up with us on this, we will get you the first lesson, which is about creating concept. How do you create a marketable TV concept? Very likely you already have some ideas. You may have something that you're working on right this moment. That's totally okay. You can bring that into the program. But I would still encourage you to brainstorm those concepts so you get that experience. And so you first learn the process, because it's a pretty high level process. And then second, so you have more ideas for the future. The program normally costs $12.99. We've had lots of people pay that price and go through this program and been very, very happy, especially after they got out and started making things happen. Right now, I'm going to give you a special. And for those of you who want to jump in right now, this is for the first 10 people. This is the way our system is set up. First 10 people will get in at one price. Then the next 20 will get in at the next price. Then the next 20 at a higher price until it gets to the $12.99 mark. So here's for the first 10. If you'd like a payment plan, you can do that for $130 a month for 6 months. That's really about what, $3 a day plus or minus. And so if you want to master these skills, jump in on that. Again, let me see what that does. That totals up, it's $130 a month for 6 months. It totals $780, which saves you $519. If you want to just go ahead and pay that off completely, then in that case, then you can get in for $729, which saves you $570. Again, this is a program that has 63 lessons. It has 25 audios. It's going to walk you through this whole process. You're going to do it one step at a time, and you'll be learning things every single lesson. We've had so many people who've gone through this, who have written 4 or 5 pilots, thought they already had it, and went through this, and they said, when they got to the end, they looked back at the pilots they'd written before and said, wow, those need major rewrites. So people look at this class, they look at their lives from a writing perspective, like before this class and after this class. Once you've gone through this, you will be such a much stronger writer, and you'll have a much better chance of success. All you got to do is just come over here and click the link. If it's not clickable, just write it down. For the payment plan, bit.ly, bit.ly/BWTV-payment plan. Same thing down here if you want to pay it off, BWTV-order. And just to sum that up, the moment that you sign up, you're going to get this pre-lesson on creating marketable TV concepts. Please do that and have fun with it, by the way. It'll give you a chance over the next 10 to 15 days to brainstorm ideas. We'll give you lots of models for how to do that, so you'll know what kind of concept to create. By the time you're done with this program, you are going to write the best project of your life so far, and you'll be so proud of it. You'll also learn the decisions, the writing decisions that will intrigue streamers, and you'll be mastering these high-level skills that really only the best writers have right now. So jump in. We've had people win contests on this. We recently had someone win the final draft Big Break contest. She won first place in TV pilots. And her pilot was so good that within a week, 2 managers came to her, and they had read it because of the contest. And they both immediately were telling her they want to represent her. We actually talked back and forth as she asked them lots of questions and interviewed both of them. And she chose the manager she wanted to work with. That's because of the quality of writing and the quality at which she had built her project. So again, just click the link, jump in. Right now you can save that money. It'll be gone in just a little bit. As soon as 10 are there, the price will jump up. I think it'll go up $100. At that point, if you end up at the next level, I promise you it's still worth it. Even if you paid full price on this, you will end up with writing that will blow you away, that you'll be so proud that you learned these skills. So listen, thank you for being with us today. I hope this already made a difference for you. And if you join us for this class, it will change your life from a writing perspective. So good talking with you all. This is Hal Croasmun with Screenwriting U, wishing you the absolute best. Bye-bye, everyone.